Welcome to the SJ Child Show, where a little bit of knowledge can turn fear into understanding. Enjoy the show. Thank you so much for joining the SJ Child Show today. I am really excited to have me joined by this guest who is coming from around the world, which is so endearing to my heart. I love that we can make these types of connections from so far away. And it's just fascinating to know that how would we have ever met otherwise? And here we are. So
I so agree with you, Sarah. Hello.
yeah. And I should have asked as well, Alena, is that correct
Yes.
pronunciation? Perfect. It's so nice to have you on the show today. And we are just getting into springtime. Is it fall for you now then?
Yeah, we don't call it fall, but yes, it's autumn. I think the reason we don't
Awesome.
call it
Okay.
fall is that we
Pretty.
don't have trees that lose all their leaves here. We have different kinds of
Oh
trees,
my
right? The only trees that do that are the
fascinating.
ones that were brought over by the people from overseas.
Oh my gosh, it's fascinating.
Mm.
I love geography actually, so I could talk about that all day. Yeah, that's really interesting. Have you been to America or have you just
You
been
know,
in
I've
in
only
Australia your whole
been
life?
to New York, and I feel like that's almost a different country to the rest of America sometimes. So I feel like I've kind of been to America, and I would really love to go again. And I'm planning to go next year, actually.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah.
I've always loved and the thought of going to Australia. So, bucket list for us all,
Mm.
right? To travel, and I just really want to walk on all the beaches everywhere.
Yeah, you'll like
Even
these
the
ones.
cold ones in Iceland and places.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
Well,
I think it'd just be so neat.
I live in a part of Sydney which is called the Northern Beaches because it's north of Sydney Harbour. So we're quite close to Sydney Harbour, but we're just a bit north of it. And the famous ones like Bondi Beach, that's south of Sydney Harbour in the
Yes.
eastern suburbs.
Okay.
And don't ask me why it's the eastern suburbs are the northern. It's not the southern. It's hilarious. But the northern beaches are some of the world's best. In fact, the one really close to us, Manly Beach, just got voted by some random, I don't know, some random poll that it was the best beach in the world. I think that's arguable, but it really is beautiful here. Incredible, incredible beaches. And I feel very fortunate to be so close to them.
I love that. Yeah, that's so amazing. Well, let's get to know you a little bit better. Introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about, why you're here today, and we'll continue this
Sure.
discussion.
I mean, the main reason I'm here is I just really, really love exploring ideas that empower women and empower parents that are maybe a little bit not mainstream or maybe are looking for something a little different or more on the kind of energetic side or on the somatic side, like a little bit less about talking about how we think and a little bit more about talking about how we feel, through this life and remembering our power. And the main reason that I guess I'm called to have those conversations is that I'm a mother of three. I have a little bit of a blended family in a way. I had a child when I wasn't in a great time in my life, and I went through a huge transformation through the first 7 years of my son's life. He's now 20, and through that transformation, I became ready to meet my now husband and have a couple more kids. So I have children of many different ages, and that's my main job really, is being their mum and really just showing up. I'm all about how do we show up, how do we show up in life in the way that is most authentic and most aligned with our values. And there's lots of different ways I think we can do that. But that's why I really love having these conversations with people like you all
Mm.
over the world.
It is. It's wonderful because relationships, especially with our children, our intent behind them can either be meaningful or we can just be in it for the shuffle, right? It's just happened and it's going on. And those are maybe parents that don't know how or weren't ready or were, caught off guard by what they were getting themselves into by decisions, right? And I
Yeah.
think that honoring everyone in their space in the journey and being able to kind of help show, well, hey, we found success with our kids, and success doesn't mean like, oh, nothing ever goes wrong, we don't ever have challenges. Like, that's
Oh, heck no.
completely an inaccurate version and vision of that, right?
Yeah.
Success means you get through each struggle and challenge and things. Sometimes you have to make it up as you go, especially when you're honoring each individual child for who they
Mm.
are as a human being.
Yeah, it's not about showing up as the best mom, it's about showing up as the best mom possible, with what you
Mhm.
have at hand and what's available to you on any given day. And often I really like to remind, I mostly work with women, I really like to remind women that if you're struggling, if you're having a hard time connecting with your kids or managing the day to day or managing your energy or just emotionally, mental health wise, it's not that you're broken, it's that you haven't found the right support yet, and that's certainly what it was for me. I searched and searched and searched and tried a lot of different things and, eventually made a kind of hybrid of them all and then felt really called to share that. And it's been a huge, it's years in the making. I mean, I'm 52. It's taken me a really long time to even feel slightly like I know anything about this stuff.
I couldn't agree more. I have a stepdaughter that's 24. We had spoken a little bit earlier. I had told you about the 12 and 14, but
Yeah.
our 24-year-old, she's kind of, I feel the same ways that you put what you have into parenting, and sometimes, thank goodness, and I'm sorry, but the child that you start with,
Yeah.
you know takes that journey with you and
Oh, yes.
it
I
has
agree.
some collateral damage sometimes. And I
Sure.
think that
Yeah.
being able to, now her being an adult, being able to say, hey, like, we see where we could have done things differently and wish we would have had that knowledge back then. But now here we are decade later with these other, and we're going to make different decisions now. And
Yeah.
I think that it took a little bit of time to maybe not feel upset about that.
Oh, yeah.
But also, I think it will be in her own journey of motherhood, which will be happening in a month.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
yes,
Congratulations.
thank you. In that journey, that will be where a lot of the understanding, right, and the
Mm.
compassion
Yes.
and the empathy for the journey will be. And maybe we'll have
Yes.
those conversations, and maybe we won't. I,
There's a
I think that,
beautiful, go on, sorry.
yeah. No, I think it's just so important that we embrace both sides of those things. That it could turn out amazing, and if it doesn't, then that's the journey for that turn.
Yeah. Oh, look, it's really such a huge personal development opportunity. Being a
Yeah.
mother, being a woman in our society, we have the opportunity to take our own childhood hurts, our own childhood traumas. It's often not called that, but sometimes we carry hurt, we carry unresolved emotion, and that plays out. That plays out on our kids. And the more aware of that we can become, and the more available we are to work on that and acknowledge that and transform it into wisdom, into experience, into gratitude for those experiences, making us richer and deeper and more available for our kids when they experience difficulty. We
Yeah.
can't be there for others if we haven't, to some degree, gained the empathy and understanding and become a container for that for others. So I do really believe that ultimately, as human beings, we're here in service of a higher purpose. And the purpose actually is service. The
Mhm.
vision, like how you carry out that purpose, is very personal and unique to you. But the purpose is the same, and so I think the more that we understand that and allow ourselves to explore it, become curious about it, put tools in the toolkit to bring that into our lives, the better off we are, as parents, as humans, as women, as
Mhm.
partners. And
Oh,
and those that's kind of been my experience anyway. And like my son, he's 20 and similar age gap to you actually, to the next child I had. And he's about to go overseas and leave home for a time, go and do a ski season in New Zealand. And it's really exciting. And part of that is so much about letting go, every stage of our children's
mhm.
development. Like we have to enter a new stage of we're here for you, but also I need you to do this yourself.
Mhm.
Like with my 7-year-old son, that looks like, okay, this morning you're putting your own shoes on. I'm going to be over here doing something else. I'm here if you need me. Go get
Yeah.
dressed, because otherwise I'll just keep dressing him. And then I'll
Yes.
be annoyed that he can't dress himself. Right.
Yeah.
So it's kind of this thing of
Mhm.
like a dance. We got to step back and we got to step in, and we got to step back and we got to step in, and we got to continually do that dance and like allow them to experience difficulty, but in a
Mhm.
safe way, in a way that we're there for them.
Yeah. Oh, I miss 7.
Yeah, I know.
Right? And it was such a lovely age, and
It's a
I think
great age.
that yeah, it's so also, not only are every child so very different, but
Oh, yeah.
boys and girls are so very different from the
Yeah,
way that
generally, yeah.
they require support and the way they
Yeah,
require independence and skill shaping and all of the supports and socializations and
yeah.
um you know my son is semi-verbal. He is profoundly gifted, autistic, and he's 14 and isn't like other 14-year-olds in my
Mm,
neighborhood,
yeah,
which is
sure.
a blessing and sometimes but at the same time it also pulls at your
Of
heartstrings when
course.
you feel as I think as a mother, just in general,
Yeah,
my husband calls it windshielding, that I often see through other people's windshield or empathize, kind of in a
yeah,
way that, oh, I hope he's not lonely. I hope he's not
sure.
wishing he could have friends. But when I ask him those things, it's not the case, and that's not
That's so
something
cool.
he's missing out on. And so I okay, that causes a little bit, more relief and everything. But then,
Yeah.
like every child just is needing so many different ways of support. So I love that you're teaching how to, number one, look at yourself. I think that a lot of self-reflection
Mm.
is needed and is kind of maybe the root of often sometimes
Oh my gosh,
parenting
yes.
in general,
Yes,
right?
and having safe spaces in which we can have those reflections with
Yeah,
others, getting the take of another woman, another mother, another person who is a professional, whatever you need.
just that little push or that little understanding that there is more to
Yeah,
it that you can be curious about, like you said. I
yeah.
love that word curiosity.
Mm,
It there's so much like meaning, like emotion to it too. Like, what are you
mm.
curious about for your children? What are you curious about in your own self for learning more about yourself?
And it's
What kind of,
expansive, like, it
yeah,
means that you can go from, "I'm afraid that my son doesn't have any friends," to, "I wonder if my son has any friends," the way you ask that question. So
yeah,
we can get stuck in our fears so easily as parents. I know I do that too. I play out my unresolved hurts
yeah,
on my life in the present.
yeah.
So much of that is about understanding that there was a little you in the past who felt
Mhm.
alone. And
Yeah.
there's that kind of idea of reparenting, like if you were having a conversation with 7-year-old you, with 14-year-old you that felt alone, what would you say now? What would you say as the you in the present? You could say, I know you were hurting and I'm sorry no one saw that. And I want you to know that things are going to turn out okay. And I heard this beautiful concept recently that you never know when there's this concept that time is concurrent, that the present, the past, and the future are all happening at the same time. And this is a quantum physics concept. It's not completely woo woo, it's something that Einstein talked
Nice.
about. It's actually a theory, and it's a theory that has some weight behind it scientifically. And the idea that we might be able to speak into the past and that maybe the 14-year-old self that you were, in some sense, feels that or hears that, and it helps them, whether it be now or then or whenever. That's a
Yeah.
beautiful concept, right? That we can actually transform or transmute. I mean, I know myself, I do sometimes get a sense of, oh, I'm really stuck in something. But if I think about who I'm going to be in 10 years' time, what would that person say to me now? That's almost like a way that we cross the timelines and we support the different versions of ourselves. So
Mm.
we can reparent ourselves, we can future parent ourselves, we can parent ourselves in all different ways. And I think that's such a great idea that we are able to actually tune into the parts of ourselves that were not heard or that are feeling fearful. And we can change that. We can transform that in quite
Mm.
simple ways. They're quite simple practices, just tools in the toolkit.
Yeah, let's talk. I was going to say that. And I'm excited that you brought that back up because what are your kind of top three, if you will, favorite ideas of, tools that can help um, bring this journey to fruition and help
Sure.
foster and nurture it?
Yeah, look, I often say this. I really believe that there are two main things. Well, there's three, but I'm going to say two first that really keep us from enjoying our day to day as mothers and as women. When we're under the pump, when we're juggling, when we've got the thoughts that are critical on the inside, when we're feeling doubtful of ourselves, doubtful of our ability to navigate all the challenges of a day to day load of motherhood, right? This is a common experience. And those two things that stop us from really finding joy through that challenge are depletion and disconnection. Depletion is very much something that can start when we have children on a physiological, mental, emotional, spiritual. We have this huge thing that happens. It's actually called matrescence. I don't know if you've heard that word, but
No.
adolescence is something that we often talk about being this, multi-system change for our young adults as they enter adulthood. But women also go through a similar, if not greater, change physiologically, hormonally, mentally, emotionally, and in an identity sense when they become mothers. And that can take between 2 and 10 or 15 years to adjust to. This is not something that is quick, just like an adolescent enters adulthood but may not feel like themselves till they're 30. We enter motherhood and may not feel like ourselves for quite some time as well. So this is often overlooked. And part of being a mother is we become depleted, creating a human life inside our bodies and then caring for that human life. I mean, if you think of it, we made a small human, not on our own, admittedly. We may care for them on our own. I've had that experience. But, it's huge. It's
Yeah.
massive. You can barely put it into words. It's books and books and books about it. And we don't really have a lot of words or frameworks for it in our culture. That word matrescence is an important one because it acknowledges this transition. And through that transition, we pour ourselves out. We pour it out because that's what we're trained to do. That's what we're expected to do. That's what we want to do because we feel great love. Even if it's hard, we feel great love for our children. And so we give it our all. And that can leave us really severely depleted on a lot of levels, nutritionally, just starting out. Think of all the times you give yourself a really crappy breakfast when you give your kids a great one, like that sort of thing. So that's the depletion element. It can go on. It really needs to be addressed. Then there's a disconnection that happens because we disconnect from our previous selves. We disconnect from our previous role. We disconnect from our social circles. In so many ways, we experience disconnection deeply. And often, that can happen in relationships too. We can become disconnected from our partners or our support systems or our communities that previously supported us, and we find ourselves in a different position. You know, we also can disconnect from the things that we did previously to feel good. You know, maybe we went to the movies, maybe whatever we did, crocheted in front of the TV. Those things may not be available to us, you know, when we're in early motherhood or even middle motherhood. And so there's all these levels of disconnection. And most of all, I think we feel disconnected from ourselves and our soul's purpose sometimes. You know, we realize we're made for more than just motherhood. I mean, it's not just motherhood, but you're allowed to want more for yourself, you know, so that's really important. And then the third level of it is just unconditional love, you know. I have a program which is called Soul Mama, and soul stands for simple, ongoing, unconditional love. It's a really hard thing to do for ourselves or for our children, or,
Oh
you
my
know, to sort of lean
Yes.
towards in an ongoing, consistent way, unconditional love. Such a simple concept, but
Yeah,
so powerful.
it really is. I think we've been practicing a little bit. My husband and I have been speaking about it a lot, about how
Oh,
we
that's good.
show our kids, our
Oh,
unconditional love.
beautiful.
And in that, yeah, I love that I'm very lucky to have just a best friend and a
Mm.
spouse. And 20 years this year it will be that we've, been
Wow, congratulations.
having coffee with each other every morning. Thank you. That's how it started out. We started as friends sitting at a coffee table having coffee with one another.
It just gave me goosebumps.
But
That's so
yeah,
beautiful.
fascinating how these things happen right in our lives. Like I
Yeah.
was saying, serendipity.
Oh,
um,
yeah.
and in that unconditional love, we're speaking about the occurrence of the way maybe someone is speaking to you and
Yeah.
not taking it personally at that moment, and realizing, number one, it's a child
Yeah.
that doesn't have very much experience in relationships and or relationship building for that
Right.
matter,
Yeah.
and also not not shaming or punishing, but really
Mm.
just saying, and later on, not in that moment, I forgive you for the things that you say. When you say them, I'm not going to hold those things against you. Like
Yeah.
it's of course there's ways to teach respect and boundaries, and I'm not saying that you should not do those.
Of
But
course.
I just find that it was and he actually was the one who said that to me, is that we just
Mm.
really need to enforce that and show unconditional love by trying to get past these our own hurt feelings sometimes in these situations. And it couldn't
Yeah.
be more true, because in those moments is when you want to shut down and you want to do that disconnect and everything. But when
Yeah.
you hold fast to those connections and that meaningfulness of being this person's mom, then I
Yeah.
want them to know, like, no matter what the situation, I'll be there for you. And there's nothing that, could stop that from happening. So I don't want them to
Yeah.
ever question it.
It's that I'm here and I'm listening. And I will point out one thing you said is to move past the feelings of hurt. And I would say move through, because I think those feelings of
Ooh,
hurt have a place
yeah,
in this conversation,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
But if
So
you
right about
are
that.
having that moment, you know, you have a child who is experiencing something and it's triggering you, it's bringing something up in you. It is okay, as long as they're safe and not hurting themselves or others, to take a beat and to own what's going on for you. Now, it depends on the age of the child. You may not be able to own it with them, but you can, in that moment, allow yourself to feel whatever it is you need to feel. You can say, I need a minute if they're old enough. You can go and call a friend. You can go and journal. You can go and take 2 minutes to cry. You know, I'm not saying you fall down a heap on the floor in front of your child necessarily, but if you need time to feel something, give yourself that
Mhm.
time, or bookmark it. You know, go, oh, I've uncovered a little nugget of something unexpressed or unfelt that needs expression and needs feeling. and, feel all your
Mm.
feelings. And by doing so, you give your children permission to do the same. And there's a couple of things I was just thinking when you were speaking. We talk about discipline being a bad thing. And I think when we talk about discipline, we often forget disciple. To be a disciple is to be a learner, is to learn. And discipline is really about teaching. It's not about punishment. It's about,
No.
there's
Yeah.
a situation where you're lacking a particular understanding, and I'm going to help you get that understanding. And sometimes that looks like holding space. Holding space means I'm going to sit here while you rage. I'm going to give you a piece of cardboard to stab with a pencil and throw around the room. I'm going to let you punch a pillow. I'm going to let you scream. I'm going to let you do what you need to do, as long as I'm not getting triggered, as long as I'm okay. I'm going to let you do all that. And then we're going to show you how to move through that feeling and come out the other side without hurting anyone, without blaming anyone. Those skills are deep and long lasting and powerful skills of resilience.
I love that. And it's so important that we can gain this kind of like tips and advice from people who have gone through these experiences and want to share them, like
Yeah.
yourself, and
Yeah.
see the value and the need in society for women to feel not like an island, but really empowered, especially by other women. And I
Mm.
I love that quote, we rise by lifting others. And I think that it's so true, just like you had said with service, that,
Yeah.
um, extending that hand to a mom that's struggling can be so life changing for each of us when we are in our moments
It can be
of,
life saving, actually, in my
yeah.
experience.
Yeah, absolutely. What do you do, like groups or therapy or anything like that in particularly?
Mm.
And I want to talk about your podcast and how that also fulfills its place in
Mhm.
your life and what that means
Well,
for
yeah, I
you.
love talking about this stuff. I mean, I have a monthly program, which is a group program, and we have a beautiful, it's quite small, and I really like it actually being quite small. But I also have a free community which I invite women into to come and participate in these kinds of conversations. I've just taken it off social media, so it's now private. There's no ads. It's just a space for women to come and be authentically themselves and get the kind of support we're talking about in that non-judgy, very supportive kind of space. It's really important, and it's slowly growing. It's quite new, so that I'm so excited about. It's funny you mentioned groups. I really want to run a regular support group for women. I haven't quite worked out where, or in person. I'd love to do that. At the
Yeah.
moment, the program I run is online, and it's been running for 3 years. And it's really
Oh,
about
wow.
the combination of putting the tools in the toolkit. So we get experts coming in to speak with us and share all different things, from like natural skincare right up to yin yoga and, doing a meditation,
Mm,
and then right through to spiritual support for your children. How do you create, a safe place for your children to navigate challenge? So it's a real mix of things, and I love that. I love that it's a whole bunch of stuff. It's actually loosely based on an idea that there's a roadmap. There's a roadmap that goes through 5 stages, and I put all these expert workshops into categories and take women through these 5 stages, so they can go from that sort of, I'm overwhelmed, I'm burnt out, I don't know who I am anymore, to I'm aligned, I'm on purpose, I'm showing up in the way I want to show up. And it's really beautiful to watch how that evolves. It's so different for each woman that comes in. It's just gorgeous. Sometimes it's a woman who
yeah. Oh,
running a business and she hires an employee, and that gives her time to spend with her kids, and how to maintain that priority, that she had lost. And for another one, it's what's her
mm,
next career move. She doesn't know who she wants to be or what her next career will look like. She just knows she wants it to be different. So it's really interesting. It's a really interesting process. I'm fascinated.
I love it. And I really agree and think that going back to your very one of your very first sentences is that finding that understanding of somatic responses within ourselves. And
Yeah.
I think, it's almost like we go through our lives and we learn some things, we forget about them, relearn them, forget about them, relearn them,
Yeah.
bring them back, whatever.
All the
And I
time.
think that is one that comes in, and you don't always focus, well, unless you do that for a living, you don't
Yeah.
always focus on it every single day. But,
Yeah.
my husband, when he was growing up, he was a lot involved, unfortunately, with the juvenile detention and things
Wow.
like that. But in that therapy and things, he really learned a lot about finding those physical triggers, finding those
Yes.
where the anger or whatever the, energy was going in his body, and learning how to kind of trap it, or if you will, or maybe just be in it so that he
Yeah.
could
Locating it even
have
is a huge skill.
control over it.
Yeah. That's
Yeah,
amazing.
and so it's taught me so much, and through that we've been able to not only work on our own
Yeah.
selves. I think that he goes through things and he gives me these ideas, and then
Yeah.
we're all neurodiverse, so we think of all these other outside the box innovative things, and it just turns out to be such a wonderful mix of skill,
Yeah.
skill building, and if you will.
That's
But one
amazing.
thing, yeah, the somatic responses, I think that there's so much to do with understanding that. And it took me a while to kind of start to focus more on that, to
Mhm.
be able to put
Oh, yeah. I've done a
it
black belt in the last
into
couple of years in,
play. So, and I
martial
think
arts.
I was a massage therapist at one time. So,
Oh,
yeah.
right. And we learn, right? So I've had
So we kind of
so
both
many
understand that body.
yeah. I've had so many
Yeah.
experiences that have brought me
Oh,
back to the body. So becoming a black belt at 50 was a big one. And then also I had PTSD and I had some trauma that for many years was causing some really serious mental health and, relationship problems and so many issues that I had not addressed. And the only way I ended up finding my way through was with somatic processes. So that means through the body, not just talk therapy, but talking and focusing on ways that we can clear energy from the body, maybe through group work, maybe through energy work, maybe through experiences where you're operating on multi levels, mind, body, spirit. And it sounds woo woo. It's not really. There's a lot of practices that do that. But it's led me to be a somatic practitioner myself. So I also see one on one clients doing that work, and it's absolutely transformational.
yeah. I agree. I couldn't agree more. I'm going to share something very crazy, personal, but that's okay, because
That's
how will
good.
other people learn
You
about
got to
who I
do it.
really am on
Yeah,
this
that's
journey
right.
unless I share? And that is that lately I've been challenging myself with my new kind of how the new way I want to show up as my best
Mhm.
version of myself is no conversations in my head. No, of those conversations that you play out that
Oh,
don't
that's
go
interesting.
anywhere with
It's a
someone
real
you're never going
discipline.
to see, or
That's a
something that
real discipline.
happened or anything.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I've been just every time I'm trying to, okay, now you have to sing a song in your head, or now it's 10 things you're grateful for, instead of,
Oh, it's a
finishing
great
that
practice.
conversation.
And that's so good because,
I
like, a
love
song
it.
can be like an affirmation. An affirmation
Yeah.
just means a series of words that makes you present or focuses you on something intentionally, right? So
Yeah.
I used to have my son going to his, father and his father's family when he was very young, and it was terrifying, even though they were fine. I was so scared of letting my son go anywhere without me when he was tiny.
Yeah.
And I used to imagine horrible things happening, car accidents or whatever, just random. And it was awful. It was unbearable. And then I learned a practice of just imagining that he was covered in white light coming from the sky. and surrounded in like a gold parachute, like gold filigree, this beautiful gold bubble. So every time I would have one of these terrible thoughts, I would go, white light, gold bubble, white light, gold bubble, white light, gold bubble. That's an affirmation, you know. And when I couldn't
Yeah.
sleep because I was recovering from really serious things, you know, and I couldn't sleep, I would just do gratitude. Like, I have a roof, I'm
Yeah.
breathing. You know, like if you're in gratitude, you're not in shame. If you're in gratitude, you're not in terror. If you're in gratitude, you're not criticizing yourself or judging someone or, you know, so those mental habits are absolute game changers.
Absolutely.
Tools in the toolkit.
I wonderful just tips and advice for everyone on their journey, right?
Yeah.
To help kind of further anybody's um meaningful journey with their children, with themselves, because it really does start with yourself.
Yeah.
And I think that, we all have kind of our why and our purpose of why we're doing it and how we're showing up. So thank you so much for, the meaningfulness of what you're bringing and everything. Talk about the podcast and what you do on that and what that's about.
Thank you, Sarah. Look, I call it unboxable because I feel like it's really important for us to allow ourselves to live outside the boxes we often find ourselves in, you know. So it's called Unboxable Self-Development for Midlife Mothers. And all I do is I interview people, and sometimes I do solo episodes, but I interview people a bit like this, and we just explore the stories and the experience of women who've walked a path, you know, and it's doesn't have to be anything massive. Like, it can just be a woman telling their story. Some men come on as well. Anything that's a little bit inspiring, that holds a little bit, like you, relatability, gives people a sense that, you know, it's normal, it's okay. Like, the abnormal is normal, you know, everything is okay. Whatever you are experiencing, I give you permission to accept it and surrender to it. And let's talk about it, you know, whatever it is. And I really love it and I really enjoy it. And much like working one on one with women in my practice, it's also just a way to serve, to support, and to be there for this kind of growth and this kind of transformation that I just really believe that everyone has a right to access this. You know, it's every woman's right to enjoy their life and to live their life to the full. And I don't believe that every woman realizes that that's true or maybe feels powerful enough to do that, you know. So I just really want to remind all your listeners, all the listeners of my podcast, that you do have that innate wisdom. You do have that gentle power within you. And, you know, power is not a dirty word. It's something we're all worthy of experiencing and remembering.
Mm. And deserving of. I love that you
Oh,
said
yeah.
that because
Yeah.
I think that's a big, especially for our females or, that self love, that self
Yeah.
confidence, that self
And
expression.
I don't know about you, but I thought I had that when I really didn't. And sometimes
It's,
these things are lurkers. Like, we might think that we have pretty good self-esteem or self-worth until something happens and then we go, "Oh my goodness, there's
mm,
this huge
yeah.
thing that I was living in my body, in my subconscious, that I wasn't even aware of, and it was stopping me from really stepping into my power and my fullest and most enjoyable life," you know?
Mm.
That's the bit that is fascinating.
I love that. And I think anecdotal stories, we learn so
Yeah.
much through people's experiences. So,
Yeah, I
my favorite,
agree.
obviously, podcasters, right? We're just
Obviously.
doing the right thing. Oh,
Obvious.
wow. Well, before we go, share with us your website and where we can go to support you and follow you on social medias, all of
Thank
the
you,
good stuff.
Sarah. I would love to hear from anyone who's listened to this. If any of it has set off a little like spidey sense or a little tingle of recognition, please let me know. It's what I'm all about. And I'm on social media as my name, Alena Turley, ALENA TURLEY. And my website's the same, just alenaturley.com. And that's where you can find access to the free community and a 30-minute chat just to have a talk and see where you're at. It's not a sales call. It's just let's connect. And I absolutely love speaking to women on this level. And so I'm always up for it. And you can book that there as well.
I love that. And you can check out that support group or that you said you had there in that community. So
Oh,
that's really
yeah. The Soul
very,
Mama.
very
Yep.
cool.
Very
Um,
special. Very special. And Unboxable is the podcast if you're a podcast
I
lady.
love that. Well, I'm so, so glad that we were able to connect and I could learn more
Me too.
about you and learn about the amazing mission that you're on to help women feel like better people as moms, as women, and really just accept themselves. And it's okay if we're at a stage where we need a little bit of help. Like, it's okay to ask for help. It's certainly okay to be open to receiving it.
Oh,
Please
it's a
practice
superpower.
that. Isn't that the
It's a
truth?
superpower. Yeah, if you're
Yeah,
able to accept help and receive help, you're in a
absolutely.
good place. Yeah.
So please reach out to myself or Alena anytime
Yes,
that you
absolutely.
feel like you need an extra nudge, a little shoulder to
Mm.
cry on, happy with, celebrate, whatever it is
Yeah, or just
that you
connect you to resources. I got
might.
so many things on hand I can share, and I love to share. Yeah.
I love that. It's been so nice to get to know you today.
Thanks,
Thank you
Tara.
so much for your time.
Thank
And
you.
I really look forward to staying in contact.
Me too. Thanks for hanging out, everyone. And Zara, it's such a pleasure. I could just talk to you for hours. Thanks for having me.
Right? Well, we'll definitely do this again. I think that'll be the best thing
That'd be great.
to continue, right? And see what's
Yes,
happening
part
in the
two.
future. Oh, thank
Absolutely.
you so much, Alena. Right?